You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a more modern approach to selling, the application of virtual and hybrid selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I am delighted to be joined by David J.P. Fisher. Or is it D-Fish? I don't know. He goes by various names. Who are you going to be today? So welcome first, and then who are you going to be today?
Yeah, I'm a man of mystery. I have many things. As Walt Whitman said, I contain multitudes, but you can just call me D or D-Fish. That's fine.
D-Fish.
Maybe JP Fisher is for the book covers, right? It makes me look smarter.
Exactly. That's what we need to do. So D-Fish is an author, a coach, a trainer, also a podcast host. So I need to be on Best Behavior today.
You do.
Your podcast involves beer and music, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's called Beer Beats in Business. So it's business.
So is that already? I'm a disappointment, but let's make up for it with some excellent content.
Sounds perfect.
One of the books you've written is Hyperconnected Selling. I mean, all your books are to do with networking, and that's your area of speciality, but Hyperconnected Selling is what's caught my eye. So I'd really like to sort of delve into that and sort of understand what that actually means. So yeah, easy first question. What does that mean?
Yeah, hyperconnected selling is really just examining the evolution of the sales process over the last, let's call it 20 years. I really think that the evolution of selling has gone hand in hand with the evolution of technology. And I got my start in direct sales in the late 90s. Sitting across from, a customer trying to get them to buy. We basically had the phone as a communication tool, and that was it. And what we've seen is, with the advent of the internet, with the advent of email and now social media and just this multitude of communication channels, it's really flipped the script where now our buyers have a lot of information. And to be a successful seller, it's not enough to just show up with a brochure like we used to back in the day, but to really be somebody who's showing up with insights, with some tools to help the buyer along their journey and help them make a better decision. I call it being a sales sherpa, where you really act as a guide to help your prospects and potential customers make decisions more easily, more quickly, and with less risk. So that's what I kind of see in a nutshell what hyper-connected selling is all about.
Yeah, I love it. It's helping them connect decisions, providing them not just information, the basic information's out there, isn't it? But stuff that's going to help them think. That's how I often position it. It's interesting when you said in the 90s, and we were trying to, quote, get to them to buy. I mean, it really has changed so much, hasn't it?
It really has. And again, going back a couple decades, it's easy to forget that information was hard to come by. As a sales professional, and this is even a little bit before my time, if a customer wanted wanted information about the newest line of whatever, let's take B2B sales, for example, if they wanted the latest information on the new line of gizmos or technology or gadgets, whatever you were selling, they had to wait till you called and brought in the brochure and brought in the white paper, the case study. And that's just, it's hard to think of that. Information was hard to find at one point, but that's true. Now I have everything I need on my phone. But unfortunately, I think a lot of salespeople, especially more of the better ones, are used to being able to just show up and say, hey, I've got information. The buyer's like, yeah, I got that. And we've seen this with the statistics, right? Where so much of the buying process is now happening before a salesperson is ever engaged. And so I really think that the opportunity for sales professionals is to reinvent themselves as that guide, as that, we talk about value, right? Value added individual. What is value added? It's helping the buyer make that better decision.
Yeah. To just go back to that thing you said where people are further down the buying process.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think might be because salespeople aren't adding any value? They're sort of trying to come along and they're saying stuff that customers are saying, I know this already. I've got that information. You're doing nothing apart from now wasting my time. Tell you what, I'll self-diagnose. I'll sort myself out here. I don't want to speak to you. I can do it faster without.
Yeah.
How much of that do you reckon might be a case?
I think that's absolutely a big part of it, where salespeople aren't really bringing anything new to the conversation. And I should say the bulk of salespeople aren't.
Right.
I think we're seeing the successful sales professionals are the ones who are making sure that every time they have an interaction with a prospect or a potential customer, it's bringing some sort of value to them. LinkedIn just brought out their 2022, there we go, State of Sales report. And one thing that I found really interesting is that, and I forget the number because I haven't memorized it yet, but a very high percentage of buyers want to be challenged by their sellers. And in fact, I think the number is 83% of buyers say that they have changed their mind based on what a salesperson has said, right? So the buyer is open and is ready to parse new information with new insights if the salesperson is willing to show up. What that really means is that we can't just think of sales as transactional like we used to, right? We have to think of this as something that happens in a relationship over time.
Sure. Yeah, so 83% change their mind based on what people have said. That's not them saying, my whatever is really, really, really good. The buttons are really, really shiny, and it's like it's very, very, very nice. It's like, it's not that.
Yeah. I think there's a really important distinction to be made between information and insight.
Yeah.
And I didn't come up with that. I forget who I should give credit to this, and I apologize, whoever that person was way in the past. But insight is, the way I differentiate it is looking at, for example, real estate. So here in the States, for example, everybody thought that the internet and easy access to information would decimate real estate agents, right? Because you're like, oh, I can just buy stuff online. Interestingly enough, there's more real estate agents now than there have ever been. And the reason why is because, yeah, you can get a lot of information online, but you don't actually know how to go through the buying journey when you're buying a new home, right? You don't know the questions to ask. You don't know the intricacies of the contract process, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't know when looking at a listing that, cozy and close to public transportation or close transportation means tiny and next to the highway, right? And a real estate agent has those insights to go like, hey, let me tell you what that actually means, right? And so I think that's where that idea of challenging a prospect really comes in. It's not about going, no, what my competitor told you is stupid, you should buy from me. It's, hey, you say you need to fix this problem and you have the idea that you have to solve it this way. Let me give you another way that another one of our customers that they solve that problem. Let me talk you through that and see if that could help. Right? It's really about bringing that larger conversation into the buyer and seller relationship.
Cool. And so you talk about how you can then use digital influence, and I'll keep it sort of high level at the moment, and we'll probably go down the LinkedIn route in a sec, about how we can use digital influence to start to achieve that or to achieve that. So yeah, let's have a think about this digital side then. How can we start to do that?
Right. So while the internet has made information more available, it's also given us a lot of tools as sellers to communicate with our buyers and potential buyers. So I think what digital allows us to do is scale our communication where we're talking to people and specifically potential buyers. It's easier, right? This is where kind of that hyper-connected piece comes in. It's so much easier for us to get in front of them. And one of the biggest things I think that is important is that we need to front load our sales relationships. And what I mean by that is we can't just expect to hope to pick up the phone and reach that buyer right when they're about to make a decision, right? And hey, do you want to buy from me today? But rather use these digital tools to get in front of people and to just stay top of mind and position ourselves, as that sales sherpa, as that expert. Hey, when you guys are having this conversation internally about trying to fix XYZ problem that's in my wheelhouse, I want you to think about me, right? That's where something you mentioned LinkedIn. That's where LinkedIn becomes really powerful, or using tools like, even email. And this is not about just blasting people all the time, but it's just about staying top of mind and letting them know, hey, when you need me, I'm here. It's like the television show, How I Met Your Mother. There was the character Barney Stinson, who was known for having a guy for everything. You want to buy suits? I got a guy. You need tickets to the show? I got a guy. I really think that the modern buyer needs to be the guy or the gal around what they're selling for their prospects and for their network.
Yeah, so the seller's got to be the guy, the go-to person. It's like, then that person, they immediately jump into my mind.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, so we need to talk a bit about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We have to. Yeah. Of course.
The elephant in the room.
It's a big thing. Yes, absolutely. Actually, again, big elephant in the room. There's loads of LinkedIn coaches out there. They'll tell you some of the basics. So
Yeah.
let's very quickly do the basics. I mean, just give me a checklist. Let's not dwell on these, and then we'll get into some of the special stuff, you know.
I've been teaching people how to use LinkedIn since 2008. It is amazing how in like 2020, all of a sudden everybody was a LinkedIn expert. But yeah, there's table stakes. There's the things that you just need to do. And it's funny that, I've been talking about this for 15 years, but a lot of people still haven't jumped on the bandwagon. The basics. Here's the most important thing to do is realize that, for example, your LinkedIn profile, which is not always sexy and people don't want to think about it because especially if we're in sales, we like to talk and we like to share. Your LinkedIn profile is a landing page. It is often one of the first, if not the first impressions that your potential buyer is going to have of you, right? Just like your company spends a ton of cash making sure that they have a good website, why would you not do that as a professional, as a person? So the basics, make sure you have a good photo, make sure your headline is crafted to your buyer, make sure your about section, this is the big thing, make sure it's buyer centric, meaning talk about how you're helping people, not about how often you've hit quota, right? Or how great you are. Because honestly, they don't care, right? And in fact, if they're like, wow, this person's crushing quota all the time, are they doing that by screwing over their clients and customers like me? If you can just take one step, look at that profile as your buyer, like pretend you know nothing about you, know nothing about your product or service, nothing about your background or your experience. And then look at your profile and go, if I didn't know me, would I want to do business with me? And unless the answer is a resounding yes, put a little effort in. And it just takes a couple hours, but it's a couple hours that most people haven't taken. So that's the start. I think we've checked most of the boxes there.
Banner's a big piece of real estate, isn't it? So get
Yeah,
that
banner,
get that
image. Yeah. And it's like a first impression.
Yeah.
Right. So just get people kind of to, in the right frame of mind to look at the rest of the profile. So yeah, banner, headshot. I always say, make sure it's polished, approachable, and consistent. Does the person in the image look like what I would expect based on what I'm reading in the profile? If you say, hey, I bend over backwards for my customers and I'm always working for them, and it's a picture of you lounging on a beach, there's a mismatch there, right? And I don't trust you. And anything you can do to not lose trust in the beginning is important. I said, make your about section about how here's the customers I work with. Here's the problems I solve for them. Here's why they trust me. Here's the experience I bring to bear. That's the heavy lifting right there. If you get that done, everything else is just a bonus.
No, like it's table stakes, and it's like just a little bit of effort, because get this right, and I mean, not forget it completely, but it's there, and people will look at this. That piece of effort might be an hour or whatever. It's going to reap its rewards. Compared to if you don't get it right, it's going to do you damage. It's almost like one thing or the other, isn't it?
Yeah. The biggest challenge, I think, with our digital presence is that we don't see the failure. And what I mean by that is if you don't have a great LinkedIn profile, for example, and I said, it's like a landing page. People are going to opt in or opt out, just like you pointed out there. But if they opt out, they don't call us and say, hey, I was going to do business with you, but I didn't like your profile, so I'm going to go talk to somebody else. Right? We just never have that interaction. We never have that opportunity. So we don't see the loss. And so we think everything's fine. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to ring me up and go, Fred, you've got a cat video instead of you talking in your profile. I don't like that. Well, that's fine. I don't want to speak to people who don't like cats. So no, but you're right. You don't get the feedback. Yeah, I hate you. Not yet, anyway. I mean, the way LinkedIn's going, I mean, everyone hates everyone at the moment. So it's you'll suddenly start getting that DM. Your profile's rubbish. All right, cheers.
Well, your cat videos bring some humanity there too. I think the first level table stakes is just get the basics, get them right, which a lot of people still don't. Then you can look at being a little more human and bringing, kind of that personality into play. I don't think you have to, completely go all 100% cat video, but I mean, your presence is actually a great example of you're like, hey, I have some expertise around sales training, but you know what? I'm a human being, and hey, here's my cat, and here's my cat reading one of my books.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. And it's fun. And that allows me to go, 'cause an important thing to realize is that digital first. I do think in general, we're in a digital first world.
Yep.
Does not mean digital only.
Yeah.
And that's the mistake I think people make, that they're like, well, I'm only going to worry about this digital, LinkedIn. I got to have this great LinkedIn profile. That's great. But we forget that that's just the front of a relationship, right? And we're going to have conversations with these people, and we need to connect as a human being with these people. So the more you can bring when you can bring a little bit of yourself to something even as kind of static as a LinkedIn profile, you're in a good place.
Cool. So digital first, not digital only. I like that little soundbite. That'll be recycled.
For sure.
Beginning the relationship. So now we're into this sort of the hyper connected bit. This is, I guess, where you're going to start to say, well, now I've got that. I've got my base. I've got my platform. I can start to put stuff out there that's going to help me with those conversations. It's going to kick them off. It's going to give me places to refer back to.
Exactly right.
That's what I'm about. And that's this information that isn't broadly available on the internet, because it's my interpretations, it's my perspectives. Is that broadly where we're going? Yeah.
That your interpretation, your perspective. I mean, I think that word perspective is so important. And it really gets into this idea of like what expertise is, right? So I said you should be the trusted expert. That doesn't mean that you have to be the end all be all authority on your topic. It just has to be the insights, perspectives, experiences that you've developed doing what you do, and how you bring those to your conversations with your prospective clients and customers in a way that helps them make that decision, right? And that is, if not unique to each person, it's relatively uncommon, right? You could say, you and I know many people in the sales training game, right? We're all very different. I mean, there's definitely some similarities, but we all have because we come from different backgrounds. Some people come from enterprise sales. Some people, like me, come from the street ball of sales, as I call it, direct sales. So, some people come from an education background, and it's not even a good or a bad to any of this. It's just different. And so you being able to like show up and start to, share content, whether that's, through the static LinkedIn profile, or as you said, through the posting of content, through the commenting, all of this is really around positioning yourself and being seen, right? So this is where you talk about personal brand. Having a brand is only valuable if people see it, right? If people do, there's a reason why Coca-Cola spends millions of dollars advertising a product we already know about, right? They just want you to remember them when you get thirsty. And so I think the same thing for us on a much smaller scale, obviously, as professionals. And that's where, LinkedIn has been a really powerful tool, just because it is kind of professionally focused. It depends a lot on what you're selling, right? You might be in a marketplace where visuals are important. So Instagram could be really valuable, or, any of Facebook is a little wonky these days. And as is Twitter, we'll see who owns Twitter next week, kind of thing. But even email, texting, there's so many other digital tools that we can use. And it doesn't mean that old school isn't important, right? I said email, but the phone, face to face. I actually think one of the things I loved about the pandemic, and that's a weird sense for somebody to say, it's one of the only things I loved. There's just so much awfulness to it. But on a business level, one nice thing is it normalized Zoom calls.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I've actually been using video calling for probably about 4 or 5 years. I do a lot of networking, a lot of connecting with people. We actually had conversations even before today, and it was national/global in size. So, doing this was a lot cheaper than trying to do long distance phone charges, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you can just ask anybody, hey, you want to talk for 30 minutes on Zoom? And everybody's like, it's normal. And that, go ahead.
No, it is. And that's made a massive difference. But I was just thinking, the thing that got me at the time, and it still does a little bit, when people say, yeah, but it's not the same as face to face. I go, it is face to face. It's actually more face to face than when you sat in the same room, because you might be sat at 45
minutes. It is
your
face
further away. If we were in the same room, our faces would not be this close.
That's true.
Can you imagine? 12 inches away from each other, chatting away, and be like, what?
Yeah.
A bit weird.
Well, that's
face
exactly. Yeah, I think what people mean by that, and you're spot on, because
I know what they mean, but yeah.
Yeah, right. But what's interesting is the idea of in person. So when people go, well, it's not face to face, but they're really saying it's not in person.
Yeah.
And 100%, there is something about human interaction that is in person that is different than a Zoom call, 100%. But I think what we now have, and I guess one of the points I try to make in hyper-connected selling is we now have a much broader spectrum of options. Our tool chest to communicate is much bigger. And yes, and I don't hear this as much. I used to hear this definitely a couple of years ago when the book first came out. Well, LinkedIn is really superficial or social media is superficial. It's not a good. And the point that I make is, yes, it absolutely is. Is it better to have that in-person, face-to-face interaction with somebody? Absolutely. But that does a different function and it has a different investment in time for you and the other person. It is much more in depth than my ability or your ability to go on LinkedIn and take 10 minutes to post something that gets seen by a couple thousand people. Is that going to make somebody buy from me? Absolutely not. But it's going to kind of start to build a little social capital. Again, I start to occupy a place in their mind as that expert. But that whole spectrum is valuable, right? And I think that that's what's important to realize. Zoom calls have a place. In-person has a place. A text has a place. It's about sprinkling all those in. And in fact, I think the modern seller, you're going to see people, because this is a skill, knowing what to use when.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you talk about emotional and, intelligence. I know it's like, yeah, you have to know, hey, I should probably call this prospect, or, hey, I should try to set that face-to-face meeting, or, hey, just a quick text is going to be fine here.
Yeah. Send them a video. So again, another option to do it. So it's not that we're going to spend a lot of time talking, but I do want them to see and hear me. So I'll just jump on something and send that. Then they might send me around their organization. Another tool. I talk about it as like having a drum set. And it's, if you just have one drum and you sat tapping away on it with one drumstick, I mean, it's not a great performance, is it? But build up your drum kit, not just in actually just your communication tool, but actually in the way that you work. Well, that's why I go to hybrid selling. But the bigger the drum kit, the more bits that you've got to play to do the right thing, the right time, better position you're going to be in as a seller. How can you not be,
You're talking to a drummer, so that's where I got the nickname Deep Fish. So playing in a band for a long time.
There we go.
You're exactly right. Now, I'll take your metaphor even a step further. Having a lot of drums in a drum set is great. The reality is a lot of them you end up only using every once in a while, right? Yeah. For that one song or for that special effect you're trying to go to. And that's fine. You have like your main tools. You got your snare kit or your snare drum. You got your kick drum. But every once in a while, you want to go to that special cymbal, right? Every once in a while, hey, I've got this special snare drum I can use. Yeah. And so you just sprinkle that in when it's appropriate, when it's necessary.
Okay. So let's keep going down the route of drums. Just probably nicking all your podcast material. But anyway, so I went and saw Motley Crue a little while back.
Nice.
Tommy Lee's the drummer there, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's the most important one there.
Yeah. Drummers are always the most important.
Well, yeah, but he's put his drum kit in the middle, hasn't he? It's not the back, in the middle. And in Nottingham, he had this huge ring of light around it. Like, it's kind of like that. That was flashing and doing. All the songs had a longer drum solo than I think was strictly necessary. But then on one of them, his drum kit started moving. It starts going sideways. Going sideways, and then you know what happens? He goes and ends up upside down. He's upside down in this ring of light, drumming away, massive solo, and crowds go, And actually, what was very cool, then when he came down, he went and got someone from the crowd and sat them in next to him, strapped them in, and did the same thing again. And I just love this as an analogy for selling, as in having all these bits of kit that you can play, but then you're strapping the customer in beside you.
There you go.
Long question, probably going to be a short answer. That ring of light, because that is the sort of the real kind of showstopper, isn't it? And I think I think in Stacey, you need a roller coaster type thing. What is our sales equivalent of that then? Because we've got all these bits of kit, but what's that real kind of, whoa, that's a killer thing to bring to the party? Or bring to the show, if you like.
I'm going to give you an answer that's actually, I think, going to be anticlimactic. I don't think we have one. Yeah, see?
Come on, man.
No, and I want to make this point because I think that is actually the biggest mistake we're seeing in selling right now, is that we think there is a swing for the fences, the showstopper, like this is going to be the hack. It's the hack. It's I just need that one hack and that one shortcut. oh, if I just have access to this one tool, that's going to be the end all be all, right? That's my secret weapon. It's not, and I love Tommy Lee as a drummer, but I also, here's my beef with Tommy Lee as a drummer. He makes it a spectacle. Like the best drummers I've seen are the ones that you never notice, right? Because they're just back in the pocket and they're just making everything work, right? You never notice them because, it's like going to a wedding, and a good wedding DJ is one you never notice because the music is just so much fun. You're just having it. I think it's normal for us as humans to want that. Hey, just give me that one thing that if I use asynchronous video and I have this one script, it's going to blow people's minds. What is selling really? It's showing up consistently, consistently, having that consistency day in and day out, having that brief touch point, sharing that, that LinkedIn post, sharing that email. Hey, I just saw this article. I thought it might be relevant for you. Knowing that you're not going to have an opportunity to sell that customer for 6 months or a year, but still investing in the relationship. And again, it's not a sexy answer because we want to, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's not a podcast. I'm going to edit all this out.
That's true. It's yours.
Answer for you.
But I will say, so from that story where I think the important thing to pull out is exactly what you said there, is you sit the customer next to you. In fact, we can slip it and say, our job is to sit next to the customer.
Yeah.
Right. Is to go, you're on this journey. Instead of me trying to control it, right? I'm going to just sit next to you and help you kind of make some decisions along this path. Yeah. And it's a little quieter, but I think it's a little more successful.
No, I think you're right. And I think, let's kick the analogy to death. It's a drummer, drum. Because actually, I think in that concert, he went and he sang a song and he wasn't particularly good at that. He's not a singer.
There's one, Phil Collins. Phil Collins is the only drummer that should sing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, so he did. But it's part of the show. It's all good fun. But it's what I'm thinking is when you talk about consistency and you want to be known for something, it's be clear about the thing you want to be known for. Because if you start trying to be known for too much, jack of all trades, and you're just firing stuff off left, right, and center, then it's hard to build that reputation. It's hard to get that brand. Mm-hmm. So this is the stuff that I do. Me, collaborative selling. You, hyper-connected selling. Yep. This guy again brings to mind when I'm thinking Simon Bowen models method. These people are very, very clear about what they do. And the salespeople, we can be this. These are the problems I solve. This is what I do. And when they start sort of scattergunning and just putting stuff like chasing likes and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really mean anything, does it?
No, not at all. I mean, going to your example of LinkedIn right there, like chasing likes and whatnot, it's really funny when you see people that you and I know maybe are kind of the influencers. They got big followings on LinkedIn, or they post up that gets a lot of views and likes. But you'll see these people over time. You're like, I don't know what they do. You're like, there's some salespeople, and I'm not throwing shade here, but there's salespeople who make some interesting content. Like this is where you've seen TikTok kind of come in, and there's people like, oh, I make TikTok videos and they're funny and they're humorous. I can think of two outside of my head, no names. I literally don't know what they sell. I don't know what they do. They make these funny kind of SDR videos, like how hard it is to like make outbound phone calls, which is super hard. I'm sure they're great videos, but I'm like, well, how's that connected? Like I don't get it. And so to your point, like the idea of going, hey, I might not be seen by as many people, but the people that I need to have seen me and that I am seen by are the important ones. I think most salespeople, for example, only have maybe 250 people that they're really talking to, right? If you really get to who their buyers are, the decision makers. So I often use the example of becoming a micro influencer, right? It's not about getting 10,000 or 100,000 views on a piece of content. Are the 250 people that you want to see you seeing you consistently? Much more valid. And the way you do that is by, as you said, niching down, going, this is what I talk about. I solve this kind of problem for this kind of customer in this kind of way. The more you can do that, the more effective you're going to be.
And build all your content around that. So whether you're going to record a little funny video, whether you're going to have a serious video, whether you're going to make a post, whether you're going to put photograph, text and photo, all those options, but it's around that. Bit of personal stuff, literally just a bit of, this is me and my cats. I don't have cats, I'm sorry. Because
They're very
that's the
cute. It's
person
okay.
behind. They're in brand colors. You notice that?
Yeah.
Oh, so I need to grow up sometimes. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because when, let's say again, Tim will talk about that. You go on there and you put your stuff and it's thoughtful and you know who you want to read it and that's what they're going to respond to. And you're there and you have a little scroll and there's people talking about this, that, and the other, and they're getting likes and it's total nonsense. You go, how much? It's hard to not get drawn into that thing, isn't it? I mean, I find it hard, you know, and every now and again you can tell when I just take my eye off the ball and it's, okay, I know where you do that, Fred. I know where you do that. That's just completely left. Yeah. I've lost concentration. I've just screwed up my own plan and just gone, oh no, I need a dopamine hit.
Yeah. One thing I suggest to people is to actually come up with 3 to 5 themes. I call them messaging themes. Like decide on those in advance. Like this is what I'm going to talk about. And this is these are the conversations I'm going to get engaged in. And those can be professional, meaning they're very focused on like the work you do or the solutions you provide, whatever it might be. It could be industry, like here's an industry trend I want to talk about. It could be, just work, like, hey, I want to talk about work from home or, hybrid communication or diversity and inclusion. And it can also be, I actually call it propersonal. Got it from a friend of mine way back in the day, the combination of personal and professional. All joking aside, you post about your cats and you've done it more than once. That actually works, right? That does, it humanizes yourself, but it's kind of this consistent theme. There's nothing wrong. Like during the summer, I post about my garden, right? Because I like gardening. And I'll sometimes connect some business lessons to it. And sometimes I'm like, just fired up that something's actually growing because this is kind of a new journey for me.
Good.
But but if you decide in advance, these are things I'm going to talk about, it does help you not get into the weeds and other things. So be more intentional.
It is. I already think that's great advice. It's just keep it in that theme. Yeah, you can sort of broaden that a little bit. And you're right. If I picture the cat, they tend to be reading my book. Amazing cats. It's like you're doing the gardening. Oh, look what I found under this shrub. It's a picture of my book. I mean, it's kind of stupid, but it's kind of still it's still on track, isn't it? And I think that is good advice. And if someone's saying, well, I don't know what my theme is, well, there is your biggie. That's your big takeaway, isn't it? Is to be very, very clear on that. That's who you should be talking about. Notice I keep doing this with my hands. If you're listening to this, I keep putting my hands on either side of my head, which is almost like, it's like to hold myself in place. It's there in my guidelines. If I'm dropping outside of that, that's wrong,
That's exactly right. And it also helps because LinkedIn, as much as many of us who enjoy using it as a platform and find value in it, it's still a social media platform. It's still designed to keep us there and to keep our attention. And the reality is we all have other things to do, right? So I think if you can be intentional with your use of it, it allows you to go to the platform, have the conversations, and then get out, right? And go do something else. But, I'll use myself as an example. I talk about social selling and LinkedIn. I talk about the sales process, right? And combining old school sales and communication skills with technology. And I'll do like some sales leadership and coaching stuff, which is kind of all around this idea of how do we evolve the selling process and how do we as leaders help that. But that's it. Like, I don't talk about, the work from home debate, or I was like, that's not my wheelhouse.
And you just said something really important that I want to take back to. Get in and have the conversations. You didn't say log in, post, log out. There's quite an important expression there. So when you're saying having the conversations, again, can you be dead clear on what you mean by that?
Absolutely. The fun is in the comments. The power is in the comments. The value of LinkedIn is as a conversation. My friend Ryan Roden made this point once. He goes, LinkedIn is not a social media platform. It's a social networking platform. And social media, like if you think about Instagram, for example, it's all about sharing content. Here's my picture, look at it. Yeah, there's some conversation, but it's really about, look at my picture. LinkedIn done well is all about actually engaging. I, in some ways, think of it as the online version of an offline conference or a networking event, right? Everybody's just there, which is great. We can consume it, on demand. And so the idea of either posting your own content or and then commenting with the people who comment on that post, or just finding other people's posts and engaging in conversation there. That's really where I think the opportunity to build a relationship is.
Yeah.
We don't like people who just talk all the time, right? So if all you're doing is posting, that's just, you talking to people. We like people who listen. We like people who engage.
Yeah. And so it's getting, perhaps, if you had a kind of a routine, would it be something along the lines of, I know what I'm going to say, it's within my channels. Yeah. Post it, then have a look at the people who are saying similar things to me, talk to them about that, support it, comment it, ask them a question, not just, great post. Have those conversations as you would if you're at a conference. You go, hey, these guys are talking about stuff that I'm interested in. You wouldn't walk up to a bunch of people in the bar, would you? Go, they're really boring. They're talking about stuff I've got no interest in. I think I'll stand with them. In fact, join in. It's like, but people do, and a lot of stuff is designed to provoke, isn't it? And you might see it. And because you're a human, you are kind of drawn to it, but it's not what I'm here to do. I'm at work,
right?
If you like.
No, if you want to think of a process or a system, every day I post in the morning. Usually one of the first things I do, I sometimes try to do some writing, like in an hour. If I ever have some time throughout the week, I'll kind of start a bunch of posts, so I can have something to grab from. I've got a Word document where I keep all this stuff. So I'll post something in the morning. I then go, and if you're listening, you can't see, I've got pennies on my desk.
Oh yeah.
My goal is to make 15 comments a day. I don't think you need to do 15. And that's, I teach the stuff. I got to kind of, like I said, walk the walk. But even if you're like, I'm going to do 5 comments, post something, or even if you don't post something, show up, take 15 minutes, have 5 to 7 thoughtful comments, not just like, hey, congrats, but as you said, listen in to a conversation, listen into what somebody's posting, listen into what some of the comments are on these posts. And you'll find kind of your people, right? You and I, you comment on each other's stuff all the time, right? And people are seeing that. What's I think important is not only does it build social capital with the person you're in conversation with, but if you think about, again, that idea of the conference, you're in the conference reception at the end of the day, there's 5 of you standing around having a conversation. Some really thoughtful, interesting things are going on in that conversation. But what's great is on LinkedIn, 1,000 people can be watching that, right? And you're influencing them as well. But even if you just do that every day, right? If you do 5 comments a day, that's 25 interactions a week. That's 100 a month. And if you can't, with 100 interactions a month, find some opportunity, whether that's a business deal, whether that's an introduction, whether that's just a better, more thoughtful way that you can approach your customers, in other spaces, then you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be in sales. I'm sorry, that's really harsh. That is harsh. But my point is, if you put the activity in, you're going to get something back, but you have to put the activity in first.
You have to put the activity in, but it doesn't have to be as all-consuming as I've got to make videos and this sort of thing. Again, even if we talk about video, you've got something in your pocket, on your desk, in your hand, just talk. Subtitles that, even if you don't, it's just a start too. Then you can subtitle, then you can keep advancing stuff. Of course you can, but
it's 20 minutes a day.
Post, comment.
Yeah. It's what I just described to you is 20 minutes a day. And if you're in sales and you don't, I actually once had a sales leader say, well, I don't want my people taking 20 minutes a day on LinkedIn. And I was very nice in my response because I paused before I said, but I was like, to be very blunt, I was like, I've been coaching salespeople for 25 years. And if you think your salespeople are so busy and so disciplined that they don't have 20 minutes for this, then you're the one who's being sold. Right. And I was like,
I love that.
They have the time and it's an investment. One thing I would say though, and this is maybe the biggest challenge for many salespeople, is it is an investment that requires you investing up front.
Mm-hmm.
Right. LinkedIn, for example, all these digital tools, they're not going to help you hit quota this month. Right. If you're at the end of the quarter going, oh, I need to hit quota and so I'm going to do some LinkedIn stuff. No, it's a long-term play. This is how you make getting quota or hitting your numbers next quarter easier. And the quarter after that really allow you, right? It's an additive process, just like old school networking was, right? So you got to be willing to put the effort in up front if you want to really get the benefits. That is one of the lessons I definitely pull out in my gardening posts, right? You got to plant the seeds first.
I'm looking forward to the next gardening post. I can't wait for that one now. Oh, look, I've got 9 o'clock. We could go on and on and on about this, I think. Well, I know we can because I've met
Yeah.
this before.
You're right.
But no, but you've given some really good stuff. And I love what we finished on there. I love what we're finishing on, the sort of the 5, 10, 15 coins, do those, side of the desk, invest that time, block it in the diary. That's what I'm doing my LinkedIn thing. What am I going to comment on? The people who are talking about the stuff you're interested in. What are
Yeah.
we going to post? Well, what interesting question did you have to answer yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I say to people, knock off 5 minutes early. Yeah. Think about what was the most interesting thing you talked about the day. Make a note of that. Base your post around that the next day. You don't have to put a customer name in, but that's the stuff to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the coins. I love the coins idea.
It's a good one.
David JP Fisher, D-Fish, all the above.
Yes.
Where can people get in contact with? It's probably the most obvious question anybody's ever asked. But anyway, I'm going to ask it.
Well, so I think there's this platform called LinkedIn. It's got some staying
amazing.
power. Yeah. LinkedIn is definitely a place where I am not all day for sure. Like as you point out, you don't have to invest a lot of time if you're doing it deliberately. But yeah, the easiest way, come find me on LinkedIn, search David JP Fisher or linkedin.com/in/IMDFish, IAMDFISH. And then, our online home is davidjpfisher.com. And I'll even make sure that we get you a link to a landing page specifically for your listeners. So throw in show notes, all that kind of good stuff.
We'll pop that. Yeah, we'll pop that in the show notes. That'd be really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing those ideas. Who knew we were going to often talk about drumming? But hey, it happens. Really appreciate it. Really do appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, Fred Copestake. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for more and leave a review. If you didn't like it, also leave a review. It's all about feedback and learning.